How to choose the correct weights in training. So ultimately, you're going to have a series of warm-up sets as you're getting. So let's use like a back squat as an example. Let's say you're going to do 3 sets of 8. Okay, so you have your 3 sets of 8. Ideally, those 8 reps, you want the end of them to be to a place where you could maybe do 1, maybe do 2 more. Basically, you want to be at a place where it's the weight is such that like your movement pattern isn't failing, like you're not compensating and pushing your hips up or like having like poor form where your technique breaks down, but you're getting to a place where the movement pattern, the pace is slowing down. So if when you're fresh, you lower down, you stand up and it takes a second, you can crank out a bunch of those reps. If you were to get to 8 and your pattern is still taking a second to stand, it's probably maybe loaded a little lighter than it needs to be. Ideally, what we're going to see is you would lower down, and towards the end, like the 7th, 8th rep of that 8-rep set, you'd be standing, but you would see a visible decrease in how fast you're standing, meaning you're getting to that place where you're fatigued. Ideally, and this is always going to be true, I would rather your technique remain, absolutely flawless rather than the weight being heavier and your technique failing. But as long as your technique remains fluid and perfect, I'd say keep pushing the weight to a place where you're still moving well, but the tempo in which you're standing is starting to slow down. That's one way to think of it. The other way to think would be as you're finishing and you're racking the bar, if you were to ask yourself, like, could I have done 1 more rep? If the answer is like, maybe, but I'm not sure, you're probably about right. If the answer was like, oh, at least, I probably could have done 5 more, you know that it's loaded probably too lightly, and then you can bump up the next set. This also goes to show, especially for people who are newer to training, write down what you do use for weights. That way, next time you come back, you're not guessing as to where you're gonna land. You know exactly where you were previously, and you can even put a note of like, oh, I felt like I had 2 more in the tank, and it's something that then you can slowly increase over that value, or maybe your first working set is the weight you left off at last time, and it helps you apply progressive overload as you slowly move through session to session to session.